Hello, 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 and welcome to the Unmuted Conversations podcast with yours truly, Latashia Renee. I am so glad that you are joining us on tonight. We are back with yet another episode, and you already know how we do here. We are obsessed with helping women unmute their message and share their story with the world. So tonight is no different. As we know, this is the month of October. Earlier this month, we talked about breast cancer. Also, tonight, what we're going to be talking about is domestic violence. We know that those topics are really big in the month of October. So we just wanted to highlight that. And we have some amazing women in our life here who would love to share their story. Some people are sharing their story for the first time, and we know that how much bravery it takes. So we are here supporting our guest on tonight as she shares her story. Tonight, it's a survivor story. We are here to celebrate survival, not necessarily being a victim, but how people can overcome and bounce back from things such as domestic violence. So I have an amazing guest with me here on tonight. So feel free, pull up a chair, be sure to share this, like, comment, subscribe if you're watching this on YouTube. We would love to have everyone that's possible to tune in to this story on tonight. I have an amazing guest. She is all the way in Dallas, Texas. Her name is Nikita, and she's going to be joining us on tonight. She's going to share her story, like I said, about her surviving domestic violence. So I'm going to give you guys a few minutes to kind of invite people to come on in. We are so excited, like I said, to be with you for another episode, y'all. Y'all have been so supportive of me on this journey with the Unmuted Conversations podcast. You know how we do. We love supporting one another here. And so before I bring my guest on tonight, I want to once again thank all of my supporters, all of my subscribers for always showing love, always showing support, always reaching out in the comments and, whether that's in my DMs, texting me. Thank you. Surely, if you know me, you know this is a God thing. So again, I'm going to bring my guest on tonight. Her name is Nikita. She's coming she's joining us tonight, all the way from Dallas, Texas. She's going to be sharing her story of domestic violence on tonight. And I'm going to bring her in. Give me 1 second. While I'm doing that, like I said, be sure to share this live. And she is with us. Hey, Nikita, how are you?
Hey, I'm doing good. How are you?
I am wonderful. I'm so excited that you took time out of your busy schedule to join us here on the Unmuted Conversations podcast.
Yes.
I'm so glad to have you on tonight. If you can just introduce yourself briefly to our audience, and then we're going to jump right into the conversation. So once you introduce yourself, just tell us a little bit about your story when it comes to domestic violence. Just share as much as you want to share.
Okay. Thank you. And thank you for having me. I
No.
am Nikita, or Coach Enrich, and I'm actually a life coach now. And I empower women to choose their own healing in order to break generational cycles and work to overcome any limiting beliefs holding them back from accomplishing their goals.
Awesome, Nikita. And tell us a little bit about your story. You can start from the beginning. You can start, wherever you want, but just share a little bit about your journey and how you became how you got to where you are now.
Okay. So, yes, you know what? I used to categorize myself as a survivor, and I find that I say more oftentimes than not, I don't categorize myself as a survivor anymore. I'm just here. I exist. I am just like everyone else. So it does not own me.
Yeah.
I allow that situation to guide me into the positive things in my life. So
Yes.
now I identify myself as just Nikita. I'm who I am. That is
Yeah.
a part of my story, but I know that that's something that I had to learn from and experience for my greater purpose here to help other people.
Right.
So you mentioned, sharing a little bit about my story. Well, my story started when I was actually in college, and it was 11 years ago in June that I had experienced my domestic violence. However, when we first met each other, we known each other for a total of 6 years in total. But for 4 years, that was my best friend. College, statistics, homework, hanging out. And when my life had difficult moments in it, that was the person that I went to, the male friend that I went to.
Yeah.
Nothing romantic at that time, but strictly a solid friendship that had value, and it was beautiful. The friendship was amazing. I could go to him and talk to him about situations with the people I was dating, situations with life and school and the roommates, and he understood. And that was the beauty in it. And then after we had been friends for 4 years and had a solid friendship, we decided to engage in a relationship. And the relationship, it wasn't, I'm not going to say it was horrible and it was bad. It had moments in it now when I look at it that I would have probably paused on and said, no, this isn't going to work for us. Um, and what I experienced firsthand was more of a verbal, emotional, or mental abuse before
Mhm.
it got physical.
Okay.
It only got physical at the very end when I was removing myself from the relationship.
Yeah.
And I changed my phone number. Looking back on it now, I wish I would have handled it a little bit differently. But like I said, that was 11 years ago when it happened. And I just knew I wanted out of it. I couldn't take it no more. If
Mhm.
you're having a bad day at work, why am I the cause of you having a bad day at work? And I didn't
Yeah.
even do anything. So that is something that sticks out to me the most. Before it got physical, it was more mental,
Mhm.
emotional,
Mhm.
and verbal
Yeah.
things that were coming at me. And I was completely different than what I am today. My boundaries weren't as strong, and I just took it. So those things would come at me, and I'd be like, oh, okay, yeah, okay. What did I do now? What didn't I do right? And I would internalize it as something I wasn't doing when
Mhm.
actually I wasn't doing anything. But instead, it was getting thrown at me as if I was, and I was taking ownership in that. And that's not what I should have been doing. I should have been
Right.
saying, "Oh, no, this is not how this is gonna go. This is not how
Right.
that's not how that works." But I was young,
Yeah.
and I'm thankful to be here. I'll say that as well. Um, when it did get physical, his intention was to make sure that I didn't make it out of the situation.
Mm.
And I'm still here today, and I'm thankful for that.
Amen. Amen. I think it's so good that you also bring up the point of that it didn't start physical. And let's be clear. Sometimes I think sometimes we feel like even as women when we're in relationships and it's verbal or it's financial abuse or it's words. We grew up on that thing. Sticks and stone may break my bones, but words never. Words hurt,
Mhm.
and that is still a form of domestic violence. If someone is always degrading you, someone is always yelling at you, someone's always treating you some type of way, whether they've ever never physically put their hands on you, that is still domestic violence. That is still dangerous. That is still an unhealthy situation. It is still unsafe. So I'm glad that you actually brought that up to say, listen, we were friends at first. It was great. And even when we started our relationship, it didn't start off as physical, but it was still a form of domestic violence. So I'm glad that you even brought that up to say, it didn't always start, that way, but we want to shed a light on that so that we can let other women who may be in the situation know, listen, that's a red flag. You want to be mindful of those things. And I know that you said there was a point where you was like, yo, this is it. I'm done. I'm changing my phone number. And then, of course, things escalated at that point. But can you remember, and again, I know it was 11 years ago, but can you remember what got you to that point where you was like, enough is enough? Like, this is it.
Basically, I'm at work and I'm getting these text messages. And
Mm,
I'm like, I'm not doing this today. I'm
mm,
tired of doing this. I'm tired
mm,
of doing this. It's not making no sense. Like I'm literally at my desk, minding my business, typing
yeah,
away, and all of a sudden it's almost like things are being thrown at me, and there's no one around. I mean, my coworkers, but if you understand what I'm saying, you're in a relationship with somebody, and all of a sudden your phone is going off, and you're like, "But I hadn't even done anything today. What is
right,
happening?" And
right.
at that moment, I just remember being frustrated. I'm like, I'm trying to work. I'm trying to be successful. Here it is. I'm at this job, not even close, not even directly sitting beside you, but I feel like you're kind of over me at this point. Not to feel
Mm,
like you're hovering.
Mm-hmm.
And this is me looking back on it now. Because back
Yeah.
then, when I was younger, I was like, what? I'm not doing this. I don't
Yeah.
understand why he even talking to me like this. I'm over here typing and doing my work. I don't understand what's happening.
Yeah.
And I just knew because I didn't live far from where I worked. When I went home on my lunch, that's when I changed my phone number. I stepped away from that building and I was like, I'm done with this. I'm changing my phone number. I'm cutting off communication. This is gonna be the end of it because I'm not dealing with this no more. I done been through enough. I'm not doing this. And it was just like it wasn't a fearful moment. It was just like I'm done. It was like I'm not doing this. I can't take this no more. I remember saying those words. I can't take this no more because I'm not doing anything wrong.
Yeah. Yeah. Wow. I think it's so important, even that you just said that it wasn't a fearful moment.
It
You
was.
weren't afraid. You were just like, I'm just done. Yeah, like, and I think sometimes, that could be a reason why some women stay in relationships because they're afraid, either afraid they'll lose their life, afraid that they'll lose some type of financial security or anything. So sometimes I know fear does play a role. Have even as a coach, and I know you probably have helped other women who've gone through these things. Is there anything that you can say to someone who maybe, or is in the situation, they're thinking about leaving, but they're afraid and, you know?
The thing that I would say, because if I had the opportunity to do it over, not that I want to, excuse that,
Right.
but if hindsight, I'm gonna say it like this, hindsight, if I was doing it over, I would
Mhm.
plan, I would set aside some
Mhm.
money, I would know that if I was in this home, when you change your number, you might want to go to this home or stay at
Yeah.
this place or be at this location if you don't know what someone is capable of or their mental stability. When I talk to other women, because there's been questions asked me, how do you know when it's time to go? I can't tell you. You got to know. But you've also got to understand that your safety is imperative.
Correct.
I would say make sure if there's a victim's advocate, somebody near you, make sure they have your contact. They know where you're going.
Yeah.
Have a close friend that is protective of you. If you need to move stuff slowly into that friend's house without that person that you're getting ready to leave knowing about it,
Yeah.
do that slowly. Do it slowly until you can gradually get away from that situation. Because I have had communications with women, or different people have reached out to me like, what do I tell this young lady?
Yeah.
I think she's being harmed physically. And the first thing I say to that person is, this is a delicate situation. Let that person know their safety is the number one priority. Your safety. You don't know what this person is capable of. And I've also said to other people, when somebody's going through a domestic violence situation, whether it's physical, verbal, mental, that might actually look like you going into the kitchen and cooking a meal and putting a smile on your face to keep the peace because you're trying to remain safe. You're trying not to be yelled at. You're trying not to be talked down to.
Yeah.
It look like you putting on your best outfit with the biggest smile and standing beside this person to keep this person calm.
Yeah.
And safety is my number one thought.
Yeah.
So making sure that you have a plan of action to protect yourself the best way you know how.
Yeah.
Make sure you have somebody that is waiting on you at whatever location you're going to, whether you call the cops and they waiting on you at that location, your best friend,
Yeah.
somebody needs to know.
Yeah, I think that's actually a good advice, having a plan, because like you said, if you just up and do listen, sometimes the safest thing for you to do might be to get out immediately.
Yep.
Like, that could be it for some people. So we don't want to, minimize that. But like you said, sometimes the best thing to do, the safest thing to do is to put a plan in place. Take a little bit of money to move it to this account. Take, like you said, take some clothes to your friend's house. And so I think that's so important that if you can do those things. And also, another thing that I thought about when you were talking is when you said sometimes that looks like going in the kitchen and cooking or smiling. It also lets us know from the people on the outside looking in, don't judge another person's situation or their relationship because you don't know. That woman could be planning this whole time, but you see her, staying, or you see her still cooking or still cleaning. But we have to learn too not to judge another person's situation because we don't know what's going on in her mind. We don't know, what she's dealing with or what she's planning or things of that nature. So I think that's so important when it comes to being supportive, because support looks different. Support may look like, listen, 3 a.m., I'm here for you, or it could just look like I'm praying for you. Support looks different. And so, let's not judge one another, especially as women. Let's learn to be supportive in whatever way the woman needs at that time. Which also makes me think, did you have a good support system? Or, sometimes people suffer in silence and their friends don't even know. Or, so did you have support whenever you were going through your situation?
I'll tell you, I didn't tell nobody when I was going through it, but the day that I changed my phone number was when I talked to my dad. He said,
Mm,
"Do what you got to do. Do what's best for you.
yeah.
Don't take that. Don't take that. You don't have to take that."
Yeah.
He didn't know what I was experiencing up until that moment. And
Hmm.
I will share this with you as well. During the domestic violence, my mama was the last person I talked to, and I hit home and they heard everything. My
Wow.
parents lived 2 hours away from me, and my dad, I could hear him, "I'm coming, I'm coming, I'm coming." And I
Mhm.
know that was traumatic for them.
Yeah.
I'm my parents' only child. I know that
Yeah.
was something for them to experience.
Yeah.
And I'm thankful that even after that moment, and where I tried to force myself to go to work, I tried to force myself to keep my mind busy. I tried to distract myself from really focusing on what really happened. And I remember there were days and I didn't even want to get out of bed. And my daddy stayed with me. He drove 2 hours during the week to stay with me in my
Wow.
townhome. And he's a preacher. So at that time, he was going back home. He was driving back and forth between me and my mama. Some weekends I would go to church. He would say, "You want to go to church this weekend?" Sometimes I would say yes. Other times I'd be like, "No, I'm
Yeah.
okay." But he stayed with me for, I think it was a total for about 3 months. He was there with me. And
Yeah.
my parents were supportive of me after that situation. And I can only imagine female daughter child and you having to show up strong
Yeah.
for her in her weakest moments. Man. And don't get me wrong, my mama was there for me too. She checked on me too. Some days she
Mhm.
was there during the week and some days she couldn't. But those those two people, not just because they my mama and my daddy, but because they
Right.
cared. They were
Yeah.
for me. They may not have even understood what I was feeling, but they were there.
Hmm.
I'm
And
thankful.
it lets us know too that sometimes just showing up is what a person needs. You may not can you may maybe you can't relate, maybe you don't understand, maybe you don't have the right words to say, you don't know what to do, but your presence matters. So one thing I can say, if you're ever in a situation where your friend or your family member or whomever is going through a rough situation, whether it's domestic violence, whether it's anything of the like, just show up for them. Maybe that looks like, listen, just sitting there and watching TV together, or just sitting at the foot of their bed, or whatever it needs, because sometimes people just want to know that they're not alone. And that's one thing I always say to people. A lot of times when we go through these moments, these dark times, we feel so alone. So when you knew that you could pick up the phone and call your mom, or look up and your mom and your dad was there for you, it kind of gives you that certain level of reassurance. They can't fix the problem. They can't fix what happened. They can't change the dynamics of it, but it does let you know that you're not alone. So I do think community is so important, having that support of family and friends. And we know things like this are not always the easiest things to talk about, even with amongst, the best of friends. Sometimes it's embarrassing. Sometimes people feel like, oh, what did I do to deserve it? Or why wasn't I strong enough to leave? Why did I stay so long? All of these things are things that are going through the mind of a person that is in these domestic violence situations. So again, I say, don't judge. You don't know what's going on with the person. You don't know what they're dealing with, but it's important to be there. And if you have resources, offer the resources. Maybe you can't, loan them money to get out of town, but maybe you can offer them a place to stay for one night, or whatever that looks like. But just assuring people, you know, that they're not alone. And if they share something this sensitive with you, just, hold their stuff and be there for them. And, anything else you would add to that? Like, what, as far as support as well?
Something I noticed, and it goes beyond just domestic violence. When people say time heals everything, or give it some time, you'll get over it, that is
Mm,
dismissing that person's experience. I need people to
correct.
really understand. Please, please don't
Yeah.
say time will heal it, or with time you'll get past it or over it, because that is a dismissive statement
Correct.
to someone's experience in
Correct.
any way. And unfortunately, we think time heals it, but time doesn't heal it. Doing the work actually heals it, because I relocated all the way to Texas from North
Hmm.
Carolina, and I was
Hmm.
carrying that situation on my
Yeah.
back
Yeah.
for 3 years, thinking that I'm functioning normally, thinking that I'm successful
Hmm.
with my job, thinking that I'm showing up in the best energy. No, 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 no. I was
Yeah.
showing up in a traumatic response to
Hmm.
everyday life. Time didn't heal that. Me doing the
Correct.
work and wanting to understand what's happening with me. Why am I going off?
Correct.
Why am I upset? This person didn't do, was that supposed to be me going off or expressing myself
Hmm.
when I was at a 10?
Right.
You,
Right.
you got to shine a light on yourself. But that statement of time, with time, you'll get over it. Oh, you just need some time. Please don't do that to somebody, because you don't know how deeply it impacts them. And somebody being depressed, having anxiety or PTSD can show up with a smile on their face,
Hmm.
and nobody will ever know that they are
Yeah.
hurting the inside.
Correct.
Have to be
Correct.
mindful of how we speak to anyone going through.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I so agree. And like, you don't get, like you said, you don't get to tell another person how long it takes them to heal or to get over something. Because we like to say that too, get over it. You don't get to do that. You don't get to judge another person's journey. You don't get to tell them how long it should take. How long should they have PTSD, and why you still crying about it? You don't get to do that. Absolutely not. You don't get to do that. And and like you said, this goes beyond domestic violence. I know that's what we're talking about
Mm.
tonight, but it goes beyond that because people are triggered by a number of things. People have all different types of traumas. And let's just, be honest about it. And I'll say this, I've said this on my show because I believe in being transparent, even about my own life. I've, dealt with anxiety, I've dealt with depression, I've dealt with PTSD, and I've had people to say to me, "Oh, you still sad about that? You still crying about that? Or you don't really have PTSD. You just need to renew your mind." Come, like, trauma is real.
I
Like, and
I've had those same comments. After this
yeah.
particular situation, I was diagnosed with PTSD, anxiety, and
Hmm.
depression.
Hmm.
And I'll never forget, I was in a relationship after this. It wasn't within those 3 years, but it was
Hmm.
more recent than not. And the
Yeah.
person said to me, "You should be over that by now. You're fine. You're here. You should be over that." And I'm like, whoa,
Yeah.
whoa.
So insulting. It's so insensitive. Yeah. You don't you don't get to do that. And so I think, we have to understand too, we have to be mindful, we have to be sensitive to the needs of other people around us and be careful what we say, especially if you're a person that don't, like me personally, I'm really big on therapy and stuff like that. I understand trauma informed care. I understand how to talk to people and not kind of say those triggering things, like, because you don't know how your words may set a person off. You know what I mean? Like you said, maybe I should have responded at a 2, but because you loose with your mouth, now I'm at a 10, and I got there real quick. So let's be mindful of that. So listen.
That's
If
true.
you are listening on tonight, I need you guys to pay close attention. Whether it's you, your family, your friends, be mindful of your words. Words have power. What we say to people, we need to learn, especially as women, to be more sensitive. Learn how to handle people with care. Because again, sometimes you can see people, they're smiling, they're happy, they seem like they have it all together, and they're going home and getting their head knocked between the washing machine and the dryer. You don't know what goes on in people's lives. So be mindful of that, be sensitive of that. And so that's why, again, I wanted to shine a light on this topic because, again, we don't always know what's going on in people's homes. And so I want to be able to have a real honest conversation about real life topics such as these, because people look at you now and they're like, oh, you're a life coach, you're helping all of these other women, not even realizing, listen, you got stuff in your backpack. That's why you're able to help these other women. And so, they see your pretty smile now, they see you sitting here, with your purple on. They're like, oh, she got it all together. No, she has a story. There's a story behind this, and so I want to shed a light on that on tonight. So I'm so glad that you took time out to join us on tonight to share your story. And also I wanted to bring up, now I'll just say this, I know me personally, I was married a long time ago. And I experienced domestic violence as well. And I will say this, that whenever I first experienced it, I did not immediately leave. Um, for a lot of reasons, because it was kind of like, oh, he's not my boyfriend, he's my husband. Let me also preface that I was like 23, so it was a long time ago. But it was like, oh, it's my husband, we're gonna make it work, we're in covenant and all of these things. And so, or a lot of times, like, I would kick him out and then I'd let him come back, and we would do that back and forth thing. So what I want to also speak on a little bit is the people who were kind of like me years ago, who would go back or allow them to come back even after a fight or disrespect or things of that nature. Like, they'll let the man come back for whatever reason, whether it's you love him, it's financial, whatever the reason is. And I know sometimes for me, I would blame whenever it was all over. I had a hard time really forgiving myself for that kind of stuff, because it was like, dang, I could have gotten out sooner, or dang, I prolonged this, or was it my fault? Did I deserve it because I kept forgiving him, and all of the things. So I want you to touch on that a little bit as well, as far as, when it comes to forgiving yourself, because we all know that in order to grow, forgiving that person is one thing. And we know that there's a process to that. But when it comes to forgiving yourself, because I know just people who I've talked to, they struggle with that. Like, dang, I can't believe I stayed. I can't believe I tolerated. Because, some of us, we're like, I'm a strong woman, I can't even believe I allowed it. So can you touch on that a little bit? Just kind of share your thoughts on what you think about that.
So I absolutely understand that. Imagine holding on to that and that person is no longer on this earth. Imagine working through forgiving someone who came to you to end you. You're still here on this earth and you're still looking at everything around you saying, I got to figure this out by myself. I got to resolve this by myself. Had I not changed my number, I wouldn't be dealing with this. Had I not said I wanted to be done with this person, that person would still be here, but I would be able to figure out how to get through it. No. Because first of all, the contact definitely needed to be where it was in the end, no communication, because the reaction showed that I was right in removing myself.
Right.
Someone came
Yes.
to my residence and tried to hurt me. But looking back on it now, the forgiveness part, it took me a long time to understand, because I carried that situation on my back. I took the blame for it because I was the one that was left here on this earth. Okay. With that being said, it took me a long time to realize, no, the only person's actions that you control is yourself. You didn't tell that person to come to you. You didn't tell that person to put their hands on you. You didn't tell that person to come with the intention of making sure you didn't make it out. No. So Nikita, you need to sit down and you need to do this work. The thing
Correct.
I had to work on forgiving myself for was my boundaries not being up high, not being strong enough, me taking on ownership of somebody else's actions and the words that they threw at me that weren't true, as well as me forgiving myself for allowing it to go on for as long as it did when I look back on that verbal and that mental abuse that I
Right.
went through, as well as me saying, okay, Nikita, that was a part of something that happened to you. We know that it molds you and your responses and how you choose to date and how you show up.
Yeah.
But how do you overcome that past hurt and that trauma on your own terms? Well,
Correct.
especially being diagnosed with PTSD, trying to not be hyper vigilant, trying to be open to meet more people and open to being in your space. I had to learn how to redo everything, living,
Yeah.
engaging with men and women for that matter, going outside at night or being
Correct.
in my home at night, peeping around
Right.
corners. There was a lot of different levels to it. But it
Yeah.
came down to me being honest with myself. What could I take ownership in on my own terms of my boundaries, how I showed up in that relationship, and not take ownership of somebody else's words that they threw at me, their actions that came towards me, the movements they took towards me, but truly being honest with myself and saying, you didn't deserve that. None of that. You didn't say
Amen.
you would do this to me. You did not allow it. It happened. And it took a long time for me to not internalize those actions as my own. So I had to forgive myself on that end of it too. I forgive you for internalizing those actions as your own. You didn't deserve that.
Yeah.
Come to the realization of who you are as a person, how you showed up, how you represented yourself. You're still here for a reason. It's time to help somebody else.
Yes.
And that was real to me. It took me a while, like I said, to get here. It took me a while to really fully understand the levels because
Hmm.
being able to reach for my tools on any given day, something that calms my energy, my nerves, my spirit, turns down the hypervigilance and allows me to sleep at night.
Yeah.
Those are tools that I have to reach for sometimes now if I feel a little nervousness or but as far as PTSD, depression, anxiety, I'm not on any medication. I'm not doing anything that's geared to that. It took me being honest with myself and really doing the work
Yeah.
to heal, but heal those parts of me. But healing is an everyday task. When you wake up, you have to choose to be on the up and up and choose to
Yeah.
forgive and choose to release and choose to be positive and choose to be intentional and choose to do what you feel you deserve for yourself in
Correct.
every moment. It's
Correct.
work. It's work, but it's worth
Yes, it is. It's
it's
worth it. My God. It is so worth it. Because you know what? And you are an example of that. You sit here like before us as a life coach, you're successful now. And it's like, you know what? It was worth it. Like I didn't like it. It listen, it didn't feel good going through it.
worth
But when you think about where you are now, how you've been able to just rebuild your life, how you've been able to just, birth ministry and birth different things as a result of just different things that you've gone through in your life, it is commendable that you've been able to do that. You didn't allow this one situation to define you. That you didn't allow it to stop you. You didn't allow it to hinder you. And I think you made a really good point earlier when you said, you left one state and you moved to another, but you still had to do some work. And so I think that I always say, people used to always tell me, it doesn't matter where you go. When you get there, you are still there. So
it.
you still have to do the work. You still have to rebuild. And so so let's just say, we have someone listening on tonight, they've left, they're out of the situation, they're trying to rebuild. What kind of um, resources, tips, tools, strategies, or anything advice that you can give a woman who's trying to rebuild their life now?
First of all, be gentle with yourself and give yourself grace. Be
Yeah,
gentle with yourself. It's not going to happen overnight. It's not going to happen just because you want it to happen.
right.
You might even think that you're fine or you're past it, but you might take a step back and be like, "Whoa, I thought I was beyond this. Why did I just
Triggered.
respond this way?
Hmm.
Why did I just show up this way?" But if you're rebuilding yourself, even those moments are lessons. You didn't fail at anything. It's something for
Right.
you to apply and really see, okay. And I say this sometimes often, those triggers are the windows and the doorways to what you need to heal and work on.
Oh,
They
yes.
shine a light to where you need to be loving yourself and nurturing that part of yourself and rebuilding that part up. And I say this too, shore yourself up, which means validate yourself, speak to yourself. If you have to tell yourself, I'm still beautiful, or I'm beautiful, or I'm still a light, or I'm still positive, or I'm still showing up as who I truly am. Say that thing to yourself every day until it just comes naturally to you. Say it until you feel confident. Nobody might not know what you're experiencing, but they look at you on the outside and think you're happy, but you might still feel those pieces in you. Take your time with yourself, nurture yourself, love on yourself, rebuild those pieces, and cater to your needs because the world deserves the best version of you. Your children and your family deserve the best version of
Yeah.
you. So you have to love you first in order to be the best version for the people who already love you.
Absolutely, absolutely. Nikita, thank you so much for shining a light on all of this on today. Just allowing people to know that it's a process, to give themselves grace, don't beat themselves up. And
Yeah.
no matter what they've gone through in their life, it's not the end all be all. So I'm so, so glad that you even shared a snippet of your story. Because listen, that y'all, there is more to her story. Listen, she's gonna tell it on her own terms, but I'm so glad that she shared with us today. She shared with us, you know what? She shared enough to let y'all know, let us know that guess what? It doesn't matter what you've gone through in your life, you can overcome anything. And
Mhm.
so I once again want to thank you, Nikita, for being a part of the Unmuted Conversations podcast on tonight. To everyone who is listening on tonight, I would love for you to just continue to like, comment, and share this broadcast. Share it to all of your friends, anyone that you know who you think can benefit from Nikita's story. I definitely want you to share. For those of you who are watching us on Facebook, please continue to follow us there. We are also on Spotify as well as YouTube as at Unmuted Conversations. If you are interested in being a guest on my show, feel free to send me an email at unmutedconversations@gmail.com. That's all together, no spaces. And let's just see if we are a good fit for each other. You already know what we do here is I encourage women to unmute their message and share their story with the world. Nikita did that on tonight. We're going to let her go because I know that she has so much stuff to do on tonight. But before we let her go, I'm also going to share how you can reach out to her if you need some additional support. Like I said, she is a life coach. She, can help walk you through not just things like domestic violence, but just getting your life together, honey, because we all need a little help sometimes. So if you feel like you need some additional coaching support, Nikita is definitely available to help you with that. So I'm just gonna go ahead and put her information up here. If you want to reach out to her, she is on TikTok, Instagram, and YouTube at enrich_enrich. So if you're listening to this on Spotify, it is in the letter RICH_ENRICH. And she's on TikTok, Instagram, and YouTube. She's on Facebook as Nikita Richburg. If you wanted to check her out on her website, it's on the screen for you, www.enrichlifecoaching.com. That is ENRICH lifecoaching.com all together, no spaces. And once again, if you are not comfortable doing any of those things and you just prefer to email her, we got you covered. You can email Nikita at coach.enrich@gmail.com. We do have that on the screen for you. If you're listening to us on Spotify, it is Coach, COACH, period, the letter NRICH @gmail.com. Nikita, I hope I covered everything, but if I did not, I'm going to allow you to give some closing remarks. Before we go, I just want to know if there. I just want to. I always do this with my guests when I feel like the Lord allows me to do so. But before we close tonight, I want to give you some space to just kind of share your any last thoughts, anything that's late that you have on your heart now that you want to share with anyone who is either in the midst of a domestic violence situation, who's overcome, but just kind of whatever's on your heart. Any closing remarks that you want to say to kind of uplift, encourage, and kind of help our listeners tonight.
Okay. Thank you so much for having me. I do want to say
No
that.
problem.
And as far as if anybody is going through this situation, first thing I'm going to say, I mentioned it earlier, have a plan. Do what's best for you to remain safe. For you, if you have children, what
Yeah.
that looks like to remain safe until you can safely remove yourself. But also, if you've ever experienced it, if you're going through it right now, I just want you to know that there is a light on the other side of the darkness. You can overcome this situation. You can help other people. But first, you got to love on yourself in order to get to a place where you see how this experience has impacted you and what you can do in order to overcome, love on yourself, and be the best version of yourself for your family, your friends, and anybody else who needs you. We need you here. We need you. So your safety is imperative, and just know that you can overcome this type of situation.
Absolutely. You hear that, ladies? You can overcome. And I think that is a great way for us to end our show on tonight. Just as a reminder, you can overcome. You can bounce back from anything. You can recover all. And so, once again, I want to thank you all for joining us, for tuning in tonight to the Unmuted Conversations podcast with yours truly, Latashia Renee, and our special guest, Coach Ian Rich. Thank you so much for joining us on tonight. Like I said, if you want to reach out to me, then feel free to do so. Also, feel free to reach out to our special guest. We've listed all the ways that you can reach out to the both of us, but we look forward to seeing you again soon. Good night.
Yeah.